She paid $3 for a wild man. What he did with her hair stunned the whole town. Western love tales. Birds chirped in the distance, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh hay and blooming wildflowers across the dusty streets. In this town, life had a quiet rhythm. Most people woke early, tended to their chores, and gathered in the town square to exchange news or sell their goods at the market. There was always a sense of predictability here, and the townsfolk liked it that way. Days were simple, and nothing much ever changed. But sometimes, even in the quietest places, something unexpected could arrive and turn life upside down. Clara, a young woman of 22, had lived in Willow Creek her entire life. She was known for her bright eyes, her cheerful smile, and a curiosity that often led her into little adventures. Unlike some townsfolk who preferred to stay in their routines, Clara had a spark that drew her to the unusual. She loved hearing travelers' stories, watching craftsmen at work, and trying anything that promised a bit of excitement. On this particular morning, she felt that spark more than ever. She had finished her chores early and decided to wander through the town square, hoping to see something new, something interesting to break the monotony. The market was just beginning to stir. Stalls were being set up, and vendors were arranging fruits, vegetables, handmade trinkets, and colorful fabrics. The chatter of townspeople mixed with the occasional bray of a mule or the clatter of wooden carts. Everyone seemed busy in their own world, yet a sense of anticipation hung in the air, like the town was waiting for something, though no one knew exactly what. Clara moved between the stalls, greeting familiar faces and glancing at the new arrivals. She had a keen eye for anything unusual, and today her instincts told her that something remarkable was about to happen. Then she saw him. At the far end of the square, a man was setting up a small, worn wooden stand. He was unlike anyone Clara had ever seen. His clothes were simple and rough, patched in places, and his boots were caked with dust from traveling. His hair, however, was what truly caught her attention. It was long, tangled, and wild, falling in uneven waves around his shoulders. It seemed as if no one had ever combed it, yet there was something striking about the way it framed his face. His eyes were sharp and bright, holding a strange mix of mischief, wisdom, and mystery. The man moved with a quiet confidence, arranging his few belongings with care, yet there was an air of unpredictability about him. Curiosity piqued. Clara approached cautiously. The townsfolk nearby noticed her interest and turned to see what had captured her attention. Some shook their heads and muttered about another drifter passing through, while others simply shrugged and returned to their business. But Clara's gaze remained fixed on the man. There was something about him that seemed different, something almost magical in the way he carried himself. She stepped closer and watched as he pulled out a small bundle of items from a worn leather bag. There were combs, brushes, and small tools that she couldn't quite identify. Clara tilted her head, trying to guess what he was planning to do with them. The man noticed her and smiled briefly, a quick, knowing smile that made her heart skip a beat. He didn't speak at first, simply observing her with a quiet intensity that made Clara feel both intrigued and a little nervous. Finally, she found her voice. "What are you doing?" she asked. The man's smile widened just a bit. "Something a bit different," he replied, his voice low and steady, carrying a tone that hinted at adventure. "Something people don't see every day." Clara's curiosity grew even stronger. She had always been fascinated by the unusual and the mysterious. "Can you show me?" she asked. He tilted his head, studying her for a moment, and then nodded slowly. "If you're willing to try, I can show you," he said. A small crowd had begun to gather. People whispered among themselves, wondering what the interaction could mean. Some were skeptical, some amused, and others simply curious. Clara, however, felt a thrill of excitement. She had a feeling that this encounter would be unlike anything she had ever experienced before. Without thinking twice, she reached into her purse and handed him 3 crumpled dollars. It wasn't much, but it seemed fair for a small experiment. The man accepted the money without hesitation. $3, he said, almost like he was reciting a spell. And we'll see something the town hasn't seen before. Clara smiled. I'm ready, she said, and the man motioned for her to follow him. He led her to a quiet corner of the square, away from the bustle but still visible enough that people could peek and watch. The townsfolk pressed closer, curious to see what would happen. Clara sat on a wooden bench, feeling her heart beat faster. She had no idea what to expect, but she trusted the man in a way she couldn't explain. There was something about him that inspired confidence, even though he seemed so wild and untamed. The man knelt in front of her and began examining her hair. His hands moved carefully, almost reverently, as if he were touching something precious. He whispered softly to himself, though the words were indecipherable to Clara. She felt a strange mix of calm and anticipation. The people watching held their breath, unsure whether this would be a simple trick or something truly extraordinary. As he worked, Clara noticed how skillful he was. Despite his wild appearance, his hands moved with precision and care. He twisted, braided, and wove her hair in ways she had never imagined. Every movement seemed deliberate, almost artistic, and she felt as though her hair was transforming into something alive. The townsfolk watched in silence, their initial skepticism giving way to awe. Children pressed their faces against the windows of nearby buildings, and even the most hardened men stopped their work to see what was happening. Clara's excitement grew with each passing minute. She could feel her hair changing, but she couldn't yet see the full effect. The man hummed quietly, his expression focused and serene. There was a rhythm to his movements, a careful choreography that made the process mesmerizing. Clara felt a strange connection to him, as if he understood something about her that nobody else did. The world outside the small corner seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of them and the transformation taking place. Time seemed to stretch. What felt like minutes might have been hours. The townsfolk whispered to each other, speculating about what the final result would be. Some shook their heads, unable to imagine that something as ordinary as hair could become so fascinating. Clara, however, felt a growing sense of wonder and anticipation. She had no idea what the man would create, but she trusted him completely. Finally, he paused. Clara opened her eyes and looked into the mirror he had placed beside her. What she saw made her gasp. Her hair, once simple and ordinary, had been transformed into a masterpiece. Braids twisted and curved in intricate patterns, interwoven in a way that seemed almost magical. The sunlight caught the strands, making them shimmer like threads of gold and silver. It wasn't just a hairstyle, it was art. The townsfolk erupted into whispers and exclamations. "Look at that!" someone shouted. "I've never seen anything like it." Children clapped their hands in delight, and women leaned forward, examining the intricate details. Men shook their heads in disbelief, tipping their hats as if to acknowledge a skill far beyond their understanding. Clara could hardly believe her eyes. She reached up to touch her hair, amazed at how soft and alive it felt under her fingers. The man smiled, a quiet, satisfied smile. He stood up slowly, brushing dust from his worn clothes. $3, he said simply, taking the coins from Clara's hand. "And a story for the town." Clara laughed, feeling a mixture of joy, pride, and wonder. She knew that this moment would be remembered in Willow Creek for a long time. The ordinary morning had turned into something extraordinary, all because of a wild man, $3, and a little curiosity. And as the townsfolk dispersed, still talking excitedly about what they had witnessed, Clara felt a sense of magic lingering in the air. She had stepped into an ordinary day, and now she carried with her a story that would astonish anyone who heard it. A story of curiosity, courage, and the unexpected beauty that could arrive when one dared to try something new. after the astonishing transformation of Clara's hair. The small town of Willow Creek could not stop talking about it. Everyone in the town square had witnessed the miraculous change, and whispers of the wild man and the $3 hair miracle spread like wildfire. People shook their heads in disbelief. They had never seen anything so intricate, so unusual, or so beautiful. For them, it was more than a hairstyle. It was a mystery, a story that seemed almost magical. Clara herself felt a mixture of amazement and pride. Her hair, which she had always thought of as ordinary, had become a masterpiece under the hands of the wild man. She could not stop touching it, feeling the delicate braids twist and curve perfectly. Each strand seemed alive, shimmering in the sunlight like threads of gold. Even the wind, gentle and playful, seemed to acknowledge the beauty of what had been created. Clara could hardly believe that something as simple as a hairstyle could hold so much power and fascination. The wild man, whose real name nobody knew, simply smiled quietly. He seemed unbothered by the sudden attention. He had done what he loved, and that was enough. He packed up his few belongings with care as if nothing extraordinary had happened, yet everyone watching could see the magic in his movements. He turned to Clara, his eyes glinting with a quiet wisdom. "Your hair tells a story now," he said softly. "It is a story that will not be forgotten." Clara nodded, her heart still racing. She wanted to ask him 100 questions, how he learned such skill, where he had traveled, why he chose her, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she simply smiled and thanked him. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with genuine admiration. This is incredible. I've never seen anything like it." The wild man shrugged lightly. "I've seen many things in my travels," he said, "but every person is different. Every hair has a story. I simply help it tell that story." At that moment, the townspeople began to gather closer, curiosity overpowering their initial hesitation. They wanted to see the final result up close, to understand how something so ordinary could be transformed into something extraordinary. Children pressed their faces against the windows of nearby shops. Women leaned forward, whispering to each other in amazement. Even the town's men, who often tried to appear indifferent, were unable to hide their fascination. Some scratched their heads, others tipped their hats, but all were captivated by the sight of Clara's hair. Clara felt a mix of pride and embarrassment. She was the center of attention, yet she could not help feeling a little shy about all the eyes on her. Still, the beauty of her hair made her heart swell with joy. She realized that the wild man had not only transformed her appearance, but had also given her a story that would become part of the town's memory for years to come. As the day went on, Clara followed the wild man to a quieter corner of the market. She wanted to watch him work more closely, to understand the process that had created such wonder. The man did not speak much. He worked with calm precision, his hands moving with a rhythm that seemed almost musical. He twisted strands, wove braids, and arranged her hair in patterns so intricate that it seemed impossible. Clara watched, fascinated, as her hair changed under his touch. Each movement was deliberate, each twist purposeful, as if he were creating a tapestry with living threads. The townspeople who had stayed nearby watched in awe. They could not take their eyes off the scene. The children whispered excitedly to each other, imagining magic and fairy tales. The adults shook their heads, unable to understand how something so simple could become so remarkable. It was as if the wild man had a secret, a hidden knowledge that allowed him to see beauty where others saw nothing at all. Clara could feel the difference in her hair. It was not just about how it looked, it felt alive, soft, and full of energy. Every braid seemed to move slightly, as if it had its own personality. She ran her fingers through it, amazed at the transformation. She had never felt anything like it. It was as if her hair had a life of its own, and the wild man was the only one who knew how to guide it. Hours passed without anyone noticing. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the market, but Clara and the wild man were lost in the moment. They did not notice the curious gazes, the whispers, or the occasional laughter. For them, time had slowed and the world had faded away. It was just Clara, the wild man, and the creation of something extraordinary. Finally, the man paused and stepped back. He wiped his hands on a cloth and looked at Clara with a quiet satisfaction. "It is finished," he said simply. Clara moved to a mirror he had placed nearby. When she saw her reflection, her breath caught. Her hair was no longer just hair, it was a work of art. Braids twisted in elegant patterns, weaving together in ways she could never have imagined. The sunlight caught the strands, making them shimmer like threads of silver and gold. She turned her head slowly, examining every angle. Every twist, every braid, every curve was perfect. The crowd erupted into applause and exclamations. "It's incredible," someone shouted. "I've never seen anything like it." Children clapped their hands in delight, and women whispered among themselves, marveling at the intricate details. Even the men, who usually tried to appear stoic, could not hide their astonishment. Clara's hair had captured the attention of everyone in Willow Creek. The wild man smiled quietly, accepting the $3 Clara had given him. It was a simple exchange for something that had become extraordinary. He did not boast or seek praise. He simply did what he loved and left a lasting impression. Clara felt a wave of gratitude. She had not only received a stunning hairstyle but had also witnessed something magical, an act of creativity and skill that would be remembered for years. As the day continued, more townspeople came to see Clara's hair. Word spread quickly, and even those who had been busy with chores or errands stopped to witness the miracle. Some asked if the wild man could do the same for them, but he only shook his head and smiled. "I work with what I am given," he said. "Every person is unique and every creation is different. This was your story, Clara." Clara felt a sense of wonder. She realized that the wild man had given her more than a hairstyle. He had given her a story, an experience that would stay with her forever. She had stepped into a quiet day in Willow Creek and come away with something extraordinary. The memory of the wild man, his hands working through her hair, and the amazement of the townspeople would stay with her for a lifetime. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the town, Clara walked home slowly. Her hair swayed gently with each step, shimmering in the fading light. People waved and whispered greetings, still marveling at the transformation. Clara smiled, feeling a mixture of pride, joy, and wonder. She knew that today was a day she would never forget. That night, as she sat by the window of her small cottage, Clara reflected on what had happened. She thought about the wild man, his mysterious skill, and the simple $3 that had led to such a remarkable experience. She realized that life was full of surprises, and sometimes the most extraordinary moments came when you least expected them. Her hair was no longer just hair. It was a symbol of curiosity, courage, and the magic that could appear in ordinary places. Clara drifted to sleep that night with a smile on her face. The events of the day played over and over in her mind like a beautiful dream. She knew that Willow Creek would remember this day for years to come, and she felt proud to be a part of it. The wild man had come into her life for a brief moment, leaving behind a story that would become legend. And though she did not know where he had come from or where he would go next, she felt grateful for the gift he had given her, a gift that was more than just a hairstyle. In the quiet of the night, Clara's hair seemed to shimmer even in the moonlight, a reminder of the day when the ordinary became extraordinary, when curiosity led to wonder, and when a wild man transformed not just her appearance but the entire town's imagination. The next morning, Willow Creek was buzzing with excitement. Clara's hair had become the talk of the town, and the memory of the wild man's skill had not faded overnight. People gathered in small groups, sharing whispers and speculation about what they had seen. Mothers told their children to be quiet while they described the intricate patterns in Clara's hair. Shopkeepers paused their work to recount the story to anyone who would listen. Even travelers passing through the town stopped to hear the tale. Somehow, in just one day, a simple act had grown into a legend. Clara walked carefully through the town square, aware that all eyes were on her. Children ran to catch a glimpse of her hair, pointing and whispering excitedly. Women nudged one another, murmuring in admiration, and men shook their heads in astonishment. Clara felt a mix of pride and shyness. She had never experienced such attention before, and though part of her loved it, another part wished she could disappear into the quiet corners of the town. Still, the feeling of amazement that her hair inspired filled her heart with joy. The wild man had left early the previous day, disappearing as mysteriously as he had arrived. No one knew where he had gone, and that only added to the story's allure. People speculated wildly about his origins. Some said he was a traveler from a faraway city. Others claimed he had learned his skills from magical teachers in distant lands. Children imagined that he had lived in the forests for years, learning secrets from animals and trees. Clara herself wondered where he had come from and why he had chosen to give her such a remarkable gift. The mystery seemed to deepen the magic of what had happened. By mid-morning, a small crowd had formed in front of Clara's house. Curiosity had reached its peak. Townspeople craned their necks, eager to catch a better look at the intricate twists and braids in her hair. Even the mayor appeared, tipping his hat and smiling in astonishment. "Clara," he said, his voice filled with amusement, "I've never seen anything like this in all my years. Truly remarkable." Clara blushed, running her fingers lightly through the strands. "I don't know how he did it," she admitted. "I've never seen hair look like this before." It's amazing," the mayor chuckled. "Well, whoever he is, he has left a mark on this town. People will be talking about this for years." The news spread beyond Willow Creek. Travelers who heard the tale made detours to see the miracle hair for themselves. Clara's hair, which had once been ordinary, now drew admiration from near and far. It was not just a style. It was a story, a spectacle, and a symbol of the unexpected wonders that could appear in everyday life. The wild man had given the town more than a hairstyle. He had given them an unforgettable experience. Clara's friends gathered around her, laughing and marveling at the transformation. They had seen her hair before, of course, but nothing like this. "I don't understand how he did it," said one friend, her eyes wide. "It's like magic," Clara shook her head. "It doesn't feel like magic," she replied. "It feels alive, like it has its own energy, its own spirit. I can't explain it." As the day progressed, more people came to witness the miracle. Children ran through the streets, showing one another the intricate details they had memorized. Women carefully examined the patterns, imagining how such skill could be possible. Even the men, who initially pretended to be indifferent, found themselves fascinated by the artistry and precision of the wild man's work. Clara's hair had captivated every corner of the town, sparking conversations, laughter, and wonder. Despite all the attention, Clara remained humble. She knew that the beauty was not her doing. It was the wild man's talent and creativity. She often found herself staring at her reflection, marveling at the complexity of the design. Each braid was carefully woven, each twist placed with intention. The sunlight caught the strands, making them shine like ribbons of gold and silver. It was breathtaking. People began asking questions about the wild man. Where had he learned such skills? Why had he come to Willow Creek? Would he return to create more wonders? Clara had no answers, but she could feel the lingering magic of his presence. Even in his absence, he had changed the town forever. His brief visit had left a permanent mark, and the memory of his work continued to inspire awe and curiosity. Some of the townspeople decided to honor the wild man in their own way. The blacksmith offered to forge a small plaque for him, thanking him for his talent. The baker baked a special loaf of bread in his honor, placing it outside her shop. Even the children created drawings, imagining the wild man as a figure of mystery and magic, his hair long and untamed, his hands skilled and gentle. The entire town felt a sense of gratitude and wonder for the brief but unforgettable moment he had shared with them. Clara, meanwhile, began to notice subtle changes in how people treated her. Strangers greeted her with smiles, and neighbors nodded with newfound admiration. It wasn't just her hair. It was the story, the experience, and the mystery that surrounded her. People seemed to sense that she had been part of something extraordinary, something that went beyond appearances. And Clara felt a quiet pride, knowing that she had been chosen, in a sense, to witness the wild man's gift firsthand. As days passed, the fascination did not fade. Travelers continued to come, curious to see the miraculous hairstyle. Clara welcomed them warmly, sharing her story with excitement and sincerity. She described how the man had arrived, how he had worked silently and skillfully, and how her hair had been transformed into something unforgettable. Listeners were captivated by her words, imagining the scene as vividly as if they had been there themselves. In her quiet moments, Clara often thought about the wild man. She wondered about his life, his travels, and the many secrets he must carry. She imagined the countless towns he had visited, leaving behind stories and memories as he went. There was a sense of mystery about him that made him even more remarkable. She realized that some people are like passing winds. They appear suddenly, leave a strong impression, and vanish, but their presence changes everything they touch. The town, too, began to reflect on the experience. People realized that beauty and talent could appear in the most unexpected places. The story of the wild man reminded them that life was full of surprises, and that wonder could be found if they only paid attention. Conversations shifted from ordinary topics to curiosity and imagination. Children played games pretending to be the wild man, braiding imaginary hair and creating their own small miracles. Adults found themselves appreciating the small details of life, the patterns in the clouds, the colors of the sunset, the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. Clara's hair became a symbol of the town's newfound appreciation for creativity and skill. It reminded them that magic could exist in ordinary moments, and that even a small gesture, a braid, a twist, or a careful hand, could inspire awe. People talked about the story for months, and it became part of Willow Creek's identity. Visitors would arrive asking about Clara and her hair, and the townspeople would happily recount the tale, their eyes shining with pride and wonder. Through it all, Clara remained humble. She knew that the wild man's skill had created the beauty, but she also understood the power of sharing the experience. She became a storyteller in her own right, describing the events with vivid detail and excitement. People listened, entranced by her words, and they too began to feel the magic of the wild man's visit. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara walked to the edge of town and looked out over the fields. The sky was painted in shades of orange, pink, and purple, and a gentle breeze played with the strands of her hair. She thought about the wild man, wondering where he was now, and whether he was bringing joy and wonder to someone else's life. She realized that his gift was not just for her, but for anyone who had the chance to witness it. The memory filled her with warmth and gratitude, and she knew that she would carry it with her forever. By the time the stars appeared, twinkling softly in the night sky, Clara understood something important. Life was full of unexpected encounters, and sometimes, even the briefest moments could leave the deepest impressions. The wild man had changed more than her hair. He had changed the way she and the entire town saw the world. Wonder, curiosity, and creativity were gifts that could appear at any time, in any place, and they were worth cherishing. And so, Willow Creek settled into the night, the story of the wild man and Clara's hair echoing in every home and street. It was a tale of mystery, skill, and the extraordinary beauty that could appear in ordinary life. Clara went to sleep with a heart full of gratitude, knowing that the memory of the wild man would stay with her and her town forever, inspiring wonder in every story told for years to come. After the excitement of Clara's miraculous hairstyle settled into memory, the town of Willow Creek found itself buzzing with questions. People were curious about the wild man who had appeared so suddenly and disappeared just as mysteriously. Where had he come from? How had he learned such skill? And why had he chosen Clara? For days, these questions filled conversations in the marketplace, at the blacksmith's shop, and even in quiet kitchens where families gathered. The town, which had always been peaceful and predictable, now found itself alive with speculation and wonder. Clara could not stop thinking about him either. His presence had been brief, yet it had left a deep impression on her. She remembered the way his hands had moved through her hair, so gentle yet precise, so confident yet careful. She thought about the strange wisdom in his eyes and how he seemed to see not just her hair, but something deeper about her. That sense of mystery intrigued her. She wondered if he was a traveler, a craftsman, or perhaps someone who had learned his art in distant lands. Whatever the answer, Clara felt a mixture of admiration, curiosity, and longing. The wild man had left no trace behind except for the story itself and the beautiful work he had done. Yet even in his absence, his impact remained. The townspeople still spoke about him as if he had been a magical figure. Children created drawings imagining his adventures, picturing him traveling through forests, climbing mountains, and visiting towns far away. They imagined him collecting stories and skills from every place he went, turning ordinary moments into extraordinary experiences. Adults, meanwhile, tried to rationalize his talent. Some believed he had apprenticed with the finest artists in distant cities, while others insisted he must have been taught by some secret master, hidden from the eyes of ordinary people. Clara, however, wanted more than just stories. She wanted to understand him, to know how a man so ordinary in appearance could perform something so extraordinary. She started asking around, speaking to travelers who had passed through town recently. Some had heard of him, others hadn't. One old trader mentioned seeing a man with long, wild hair wandering along dusty roads, carrying nothing but a small satchel and a confident stride. Another spoke of a similar figure in a distant town, who was rumored to weave beauty into everyday life, leaving behind smiles and stories wherever he went. The more Clara learned, the more fascinated she became. One afternoon, she decided to visit the places where he had worked, hoping for clues. She walked through the town square, stopping at the small corner where he had set up his stand. She noticed the marks in the dust, the faint impressions of where his chair and bag had been. It was as if he had been there only yesterday, yet time had already begun to erase his presence. Clara ran her fingers along the worn wooden surfaces, imagining the man preparing his tools, thinking carefully about each motion, and creating beauty from simple strands of hair. She could almost hear his humming, soft and rhythmic, filling the quiet air. In her search, Clara discovered that he had a reputation far beyond Willow Creek. Travelers told her stories of towns where he had appeared and left, of hairstyles transformed into works of art, of people inspired by his presence. It seemed that this man, who everyone called the Wild Man, was not wild at all. He was a master in disguise, someone who had trained his hands and mind to see beauty where others saw only ordinary strands. His gift was rare, and the way he shared it was even rarer. Clara realized something important during these discoveries. The Wild Man did not seek fame, recognition, or money. He traveled lightly, lived simply, and focused entirely on the craft he loved. The $3 she had given him were not for payment, but perhaps a token of trust, a small gesture that allowed him to share his talent freely. It was a lesson that touched Clara deeply. She understood that true talent often works quietly, creating wonder without demanding attention or reward. The more she thought about it, the more Clara appreciated what had happened. The wild man had done more than style her hair. He had shown her, and the town, the beauty that exists in unexpected places. He had reminded everyone that skill, creativity, and attention to detail could transform ordinary life into something extraordinary. Her hair was not just a work of art. It was a symbol of curiosity, courage, and the hidden wonders in the world. Clara also began to notice subtle changes within herself. She felt more confident, more aware of beauty in everyday things, and more willing to embrace the unexpected. She paid attention to the patterns of sunlight on the walls, the shapes of leaves in the wind, and the laughter of children playing in the streets. Everything seemed richer, more vibrant, and full of possibility. The wild man had left her not only with a hairstyle but with a new perspective on life itself. One evening, as Clara sat by her window watching the sunset, she reflected on all that had happened. She thought about the faces of the townspeople, their amazement, their whispers of wonder. She remembered the children pressing against windows, wide-eyed and curious. She remembered the mayor tipping his hat in astonishment, the women leaning forward to examine the intricate details, and the men who had stopped in their tracks, unable to hide their admiration. Every reaction had been a reminder of the impact one small act of skill and creativity could have. In the days that followed, Clara often returned to the quiet corner of the square where he had worked. She would run her fingers along the worn surfaces, imagining the man setting up his small stand, preparing his tools, and creating beauty in silence. Sometimes she brought her friends, showing them the place where the magic had happened. Together, they marveled at the idea that a single person could leave such a lasting impression on an entire town. Through all this reflection, Clara realized that the wild man had given her more than a story. He had given her a sense of possibility. His skill reminded her that ordinary life could be extraordinary if approached with curiosity, patience, and care. Each braid he had woven, each twist he had formed, was a lesson in seeing the potential for wonder everywhere. She understood now why the town had been so captivated. It was not just the hairstyle itself, but the reminder that magic could exist in the simplest of moments. The town of Willow Creek, too, began to embrace this lesson. People started noticing beauty in places they had previously overlooked. The patterns of shadows on a dusty street, the colors of wildflowers along the road, the rhythm of the wind in the trees. Clara's hair had sparked a change in perspective, reminding the townspeople that life was full of unexpected gifts. The story of the wild man became part of local lore, a tale that was told and retold with admiration, wonder, and a touch of awe. Clara never forgot the lesson of his visit. She continued to care for her hair, not just for its beauty, but as a reminder of what had happened and the values it represented: curiosity, courage, and the willingness to embrace the extraordinary. Each morning, as she looked in the mirror, she remembered the hands that had transformed her hair, the quiet skill, and the magic of the process. The wild man had left her with more than beauty. He had left her with inspiration. Though she never saw him again, Clara felt his presence in small ways. Whenever she noticed a beautiful pattern in nature, a clever design, or an act of quiet skill, she smiled and thought of him. She shared the story with travelers, friends, and neighbors, making sure that the magic was never forgotten. It was not just a story about hair. It was a story about seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary, about recognizing talent and creativity, and about embracing the unexpected. In time, the wild man became more than a mysterious figure. He became a symbol. He represented the idea that beauty could be found anywhere, and that a small act of care and skill could inspire an entire community. Clara felt proud to have been part of his story and grateful for the reminder that life could always surprise you if you were open to it. And so, as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Clara carried the memory of the wild man with her. She continued her daily life, tending to chores, visiting neighbors, and walking through the streets of Willow Creek, but she did so with a new perspective. The ordinary had become extraordinary, and the town itself seemed more alive because of a single, fleeting visit. Clara understood that some moments, though brief, have the power to leave a lasting impact, and this was one of those moments. She smiled softly as she ran her fingers through the intricate braids he had left behind. The wild man's artistry was not just in the style, but in the feeling it created, the sense of wonder, possibility, and magic that lingered long after he was gone. And though she did not know when or if he would return, she felt certain that wherever he went, he continued to inspire, create, and transform lives in ways both seen and unseen. Willow Creek would never forget him, and neither would Clara. His brief visit had become a story that would be told for generations, a reminder that extraordinary beauty could appear in ordinary places, and that life is always full of surprises if you are willing to notice them. Weeks had passed since the wild man had left Willow Creek, yet the town still felt the lingering magic of his brief visit. Clara's hair remained as remarkable as the day it had been styled, and the story of the transformation had become part of the town's daily conversation. People could not stop talking about it, how a simple act, costing only $3, had created something so extraordinary. Children reenacted the event in their games, weaving imaginary braids and pretending to follow the steps of the mysterious craftsman. Adults smiled knowingly at one another, recalling the awe in their own eyes the day Clara's hair became a masterpiece. Clara herself began to notice how the experience had changed her. She felt more confident walking through the streets, no longer shy about attracting attention. But her confidence came not from vanity. It came from a deeper understanding of beauty, skill, and possibility. She had seen firsthand how a single person's talent could inspire wonder in an entire town. She realized that her life, and the lives of everyone in Willow Creek, had been touched by something far greater than a hairstyle. It was a lesson in curiosity, courage, and openness to the unexpected. People from nearby towns had started to visit, hoping to catch a glimpse of Clara's hair. Travelers, drawn by the tales of a mysterious man and a miraculous hairstyle, came with wide eyes and eager questions. Some asked if the wild man might return, others simply wanted to see the intricate braids and twists they had heard about. Clara welcomed them warmly, telling her story again and again. She described how the wild man had arrived, how he had worked silently, and how her ordinary hair had been transformed into something extraordinary. Each telling felt like reliving the magic, and each listener seemed just as amazed as she had been the first day. Despite all the attention, Clara remained humble. She always made it clear that the credit belonged to the wild man. Without his skill, patience, and vision, her hair would have remained ordinary. She often explained to visitors that the story was more than just about the hairstyle. It was about seeing the potential for beauty in everyday life, about noticing the small details that others might overlook, and about embracing the unexpected moments that could change everything. The town of Willow Creek, too, began to change in subtle ways. People noticed beauty in places they had previously ignored. The patterns of sunlight through the trees, the curves of the hills, the quiet ripples of the creek that ran through the edge of town. Children played more imaginatively, inspired by the story of the wild man and the magic of transformation. Adults took time to appreciate skill and creativity, whether in the work of the blacksmith, the baker, or the carpenter. The town had been reminded that wonder could exist anywhere, and that small acts of care and artistry could create lasting memories. One day, Clara found herself walking to the same quiet corner of the market where the wild man had first set up his stand. She ran her fingers along the worn wooden surfaces, remembering how he had prepared his tools, how he had worked so quietly and precisely, and how he had transformed her hair in ways she had never imagined. The memories were vivid, filled with wonder, and she realized that this moment, though in the past, still held power. It reminded her to approach life with curiosity, patience, and care, just as he had done with her hair. Clara also thought about the wild man himself. She had never known his real name, his origins, or the full story of his life. Yet she felt connected to him through the gift he had shared. She imagined him traveling through distant towns, leaving behind small miracles, touching lives with his quiet skill, and inspiring wonder wherever he went. She realized that some people are like passing stars, briefly visible, brilliant, and unforgettable, leaving behind a trail of light that guides others long after they are gone. The more Clara thought about him, the more she appreciated the lesson he had left behind. Life is full of ordinary days, yet even in the simplest moments, there is potential for extraordinary experiences. The wild man had shown her that talent and creativity are not just about skill, they are about seeing the world differently, noticing beauty, and transforming it into something remarkable. Clara felt grateful, not only for the hairstyle but for the perspective it had given her. As time passed, the story of the wild man and Clara's hair became a cherished part of Willow Creek's history. Families told it to their children, travelers recounted it to new visitors, and the townspeople spoke of it with pride. It was no longer just a story about hair. It had become a story about curiosity, wonder, and the extraordinary hidden in ordinary life. Every retelling inspired imagination and excitement, reminding everyone that even the smallest actions can leave a lasting impact. Clara's daily life continued, filled with the usual routines of chores, errands, and visits with friends and neighbors. But she approached each day with a sense of purpose and awareness that had not been there before. She noticed small moments of beauty, small acts of kindness, and small opportunities to create joy. The wild man's visit had taught her that the ordinary could become extraordinary when met with attention, care, and imagination. Her hair remained a source of pride and joy, a visible reminder of the experience. But it was more than just beauty. It was a symbol of growth and inspiration. Whenever Clara touched the intricate braids, she remembered the quiet skill and focus of the wild man, and the lesson that talent is not just about what is done, but about how it is shared. She knew that this experience would stay with her forever, shaping her perspective and inspiring her to embrace life's surprises. One evening, Clara walked to the edge of the town, where the fields stretched toward the horizon, glowing in the golden light of sunset. She let the wind play with her hair, watching the intricate braids catch the light and shimmer in motion. She thought about the wild man, wondering where he had gone and how many other lives he had touched since leaving Willow Creek. She felt a quiet sense of connection to him, knowing that his artistry had left an imprint not only on her, but on the entire town. Clara reflected on the lessons she had learned. She realized that life is full of fleeting moments, brief encounters, and small miracles. Some may go unnoticed, while others, like her meeting with the wild man, leave a lasting impression. She understood that it is often in the ordinary moments that extraordinary experiences can be found, and that the people we meet, even for a short time, can shape our lives in profound ways. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, Clara felt a sense of peace and gratitude. She knew that Willow Creek would remember the story for generations, and that the lesson of the wild man would continue to inspire wonder, creativity, and appreciation for the beauty in everyday life. She smiled softly, running her fingers through her hair, feeling both the physical texture and the memory of the magic it represented. Clara's hair, the story of the wild man, and the experience itself became a legacy. It was a story of curiosity, courage, and openness to the unexpected. It reminded the townspeople and visitors alike that beauty and wonder could appear in the most unlikely places, that talent could transform ordinary life, and that even brief encounters can leave permanent marks on the heart and mind. Over time, the story inspired others to notice the extraordinary in their own lives. Children learned to see magic in everyday objects. Adults discovered joy in simple moments and recognized the value of skill and creativity in their work. Travelers carried the tale to distant towns, spreading the story of Willow Creek and the wild man who had transformed a young woman's hair into something unforgettable. Clara never forgot the man who had changed not only her hair but also her perspective. She often thought of him as a teacher of subtle wisdom, a guide who had shown her that the world is full of hidden wonders waiting to be discovered. She cherished the memory of his quiet skill, his focus, and the care with which he worked. Though he never returned, his presence remained alive in her heart and in the town, a reminder that true artistry is timeless. As Clara drifted off to sleep each night, she would sometimes imagine the wild man walking through distant towns, bringing joy, wonder, and inspiration wherever he went. She knew that he would continue to touch lives with his talent, and she felt fortunate to have been part of his story. The lesson of his visit stayed with her, that the ordinary could become extraordinary, that beauty could be found everywhere, and that life is full of moments waiting to astonish and inspire. And so, Willow Creek continued to thrive, carrying the story of Clara and the wild man through generations. It became more than just a tale of hair. It became a symbol of hope, imagination, and the extraordinary possibilities hidden in everyday life. Clara's heart remained full of gratitude and wonder, and her hair, a lasting masterpiece, shimmered as a reminder that even the simplest acts can leave the deepest impressions. In the end, the wild man had given Willow Creek a gift far greater than anyone could have imagined. He had given them a story, a lesson, and a memory that would endure forever. Clara had learned that the world is full of surprises, that beauty can appear when least expected, and that even the briefest encounters can change lives in ways that are lasting and profound. She carried this lesson with her every day, knowing that the magic of that summer morning would never fade, and that the story of the wild man and her hair would continue to inspire awe and wonder for generations to come.